Hi, good morning, guys. My name is Atina. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Okay, we'll start now. Okay. So my name is Atina. I'm a staff here at YNOT, so and Track Services. Thanks everyone for joining. And just to let you know, the session has been recorded. So just letting you know. Okay, so we want to thank Dr. Blackwood for being here with us today. Thank you. And to get in like a little details before I turn it over to Dr. Blackwood. Okay, so today's session is about how to break through anxiety and maximize the moment. And we'll have questions at the end or when Dr. Blackwood decide he wants to go into the question and answer. And also we are providing an incentive. So if you want to leave your name and email in the chat, and a link will be sent out to you. These incentives could be in a form of a gift card. So yeah. And also I want to introduce the 1 year online Help Them Be Brave course. It's a 6-week course. I'll leave the link in the chat and also the password and how to get through it. It will tell you to sign up and to pay, but the code will be YNOT, so it will be free of charge. It started on September the 13th. So we'll go from there. So it's a 1-year course, so it will end next year, September 13th. If you guys have any questions, just leave it in the chat and we'll get to them as soon as possible. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Blackwood.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to make you the host so it's easier.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Good, good. Just want to make sure we have a little sound check before we get started. I hope everybody's doing good this afternoon / evening. I'm really excited to be here and to share this time with you. Yeah, so at the end, there will be a time for questions, but just to add a little clarity before we jump in about the course. It's a 6-week online course called Help Them Be Brave. It's targeting the opportunity for parents to support their kids who are dealing with anxiety. So that's really what it's about. It's a 6-week course. There are videos attached and there's a workbook. So it's a great resource for you if you are part of the Youth Now on Track community, right? They have made a special arrangement for you to have access to the course for a year. So it's not a year-long course. It doesn't take that long to go through it, but you will have a year to go through it again and again and again, as many times as you would like. All right. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to have a good time. So feel free to put things in the chat or just keep notes so that you will have an opportunity to recall your questions when we come around to it at the end. So I'm going to leave a good chunk of time for questions because sometimes we run out of time. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Actually, let me make sure this is open and ready to go. Okay, yes, it is. Play from the start. All right. Now I can still hear you guys. So I'm going to ask everybody, if you can see my screen, okay, because the last thing I want is for you guys to not be able to see things. And then, we move on as if you can. So can I get a thumbs up if you guys can see my screen? Yes, good, perfect. We are in business. All right, all right, all right. So we are going to be talking about how to break through anxiety and maximize the moment. Okay, maximize the moment. This is going to be a session that you will remember for the rest of your lives. I was talking to a young man the other day, and he was telling me about he's now engaged, getting ready to be married. And I was so excited for him because a couple years before that, he was just saying he just graduated from university. I was really excited about that. And yes, it's a wonderful thing, but this is so significant because of where he's coming from. I had the opportunity to support him and walk the journey. So I know how debilitating his anxiety was. I know how dark the depression was for him. And if we're going to talk about breaking through our anxiety and learning to maximize the moments, it's going to be so important that we do not compare our journey and our experience to other people's. That's not the way to do life. So as we talk about this content here, it's going to be important for you to take the concepts and apply it to your situation. I talk a lot about myself because it helps me to, avoid sharing other people's business, right? And we don't want to do that. This is a very personal journey, but it's really, really important because if you are going to break through anxiety and learn to maximize the moment, there are going to be two important questions, probably the most two important questions you will ever be asked, and for you to ask yourself. Two questions. You're going to want to know the answer to these questions. Who are you? And how do you want to be? Who are you? And how do you want to be? Those are two questions I'm asking you, and you get to ask yourself over and over and over again. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Dr. Andrew Blackwood, also known as Coach Drew, your healing and communication specialist. I have a very personal and intimate knowledge, as well as a professional understanding of anxiety. And I'm going to share that with you today, because we're talking about anxiety and how to break through it. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But I want to be clear first about the cost of anxiety. A lot of people think the worst part about anxiety is how you feel. And while it's unpleasant and it's uncomfortable, that's not the worst part of anxiety. I know a lot of people who struggle to get to school, and some people struggle to get to work. That's not even the worst part about anxiety. Anxiety robs us of our best selves. Anxiety gets in the way of us understanding who we are and maximizing our lives. That's the real cost. I have children myself, and I want them to live a happy and confident life. Why? Because I believe they were created with purpose. When we don't live out our best selves, we do not live out our best lives, and we do not fulfill our purpose. A lot of people seek happiness before they seek purpose and fulfillment. If you do not have fulfillment and purpose, you will not be happy. Okay, it's really important that the cost of anxiety, right? We're going to talk a little bit about what it looks like, what are signs of health and signs of growth, but I really want to talk about why that's important. It's important. It's important because some people get hung up on the past, okay? Some people get really hung up on the past. And it's not the past that really determines your future. Okay, it is not the past. It is not the past. Right now is what determines your future. Right now, this moment is all you have. That's true all the time, right? The way that we feel, we live from that place. And it's important to understand what we feel comes from what we think. And if we're thinking about the past or we're thinking about the future, guess when we're doing it? We're doing it in the present. So now is the most important time. The present is the most important moment. Okay. I'm going to get into why that is, but I want to just be clear. Okay. Because what you choose to do today, that matters the most. Doesn't matter what you did yesterday. What you're going to do in the future really doesn't even matter either, because that's going to be based on what you do today. Okay. So it is in this moment where we experience real change. Okay. Real change. I had the privilege of spending some time, some one-on-one time with my dad just the other day over this Thanksgiving weekend that we just had here in Canada. And I've had many conversations with my dad about the past, but this one was different. This moment was so precious. He shared some things with me that I'd never heard before. And he went back to the past from the present. In that moment, he shared with me. And that moment has impacted me, and I know is going to impact my future. Again, it really doesn't matter what has happened in the past. It's what we do with it now. And we're going to talk about how to access the now so we can maximize the moment. Okay. Because anxiety gets in the way. So, what are we really talking about when we talk about anxiety? So, anxiety, in essence, is a picture of the future that is unpleasant. When we think about the future in unpleasant ways, we're going to feel anxious. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's just how we are wired. What we see on the screen of our minds projects and infiltrates and informs our body in the form of emotions. And emotions are physiologically experienced in our body. You experience physiological sensations as a result of what you see. That's how anxiety works. And in my experience of helping people with anxiety over the years, I know that there are two different experiences of anxiety. One is when it's really clear, when you know exactly what's troubling you, you know exactly what you're worried about. And remember, if you're worried about something, it is not something that has happened yet. It's something that's in the future, right? We cannot know for sure that this is going to happen, but because we're picturing it on the screen of our minds, we are worried. We experience anxiety. So that's when it's clear. You can label it. You can say, this is what I'm worried about. The second kind, which is what's most common, is the ambiguous kind. It's the unclear kind. When you just have a sense, you feel something in your body is going on, and you know that you're anxious, and you know that you're unsettled, and you know that you're uncomfortable, but you don't know exactly why. Okay. Can anybody relate to that? If you can relate to that, you can raise your hand or put a thumbs up. I know we don't want to put thumbs up because it sounds like it's good. But if you can relate to that, right? Either one of these experiences, because I'm of the opinion that everyone in the world experiences anxiety. It's not a bad emotion. I don't believe any emotions are bad, to be honest with you. They may be unpleasant, and what we might do with them is unproductive, but feeling emotions are not bad. They just happen. Your body cannot tell the difference between what is real and what is imagined. So, when we're talking about anxiety and breaking through anxiety, you cannot break through anxiety if you do not understand it. Okay. In all that getting, you want to get understanding. If you're going to do anything, you want to understand first. So these are the general kinds of experiences of anxiety. So here's what's important. In order to address anxiety, we want to move from that second kind of anxiety, the unclear kind, the ambiguous kind, to making it clear. And it's a lot easier than you might think. Okay. It's really important to understand how this works. Okay. Because a lot of people think that uncertainty is a source of anxiety. If I were to do a poll, I'd be very curious to see how many people think that, uncertainty is the same as anxiety. Okay, I'm curious. Raise your hand. If you think uncertainty is the same as anxiety, raise your hand. Right? Okay, so some people are raising their hands, right? Some people, they really feel uncomfortable when they don't know what's going to happen. But here's the interesting thing. You don't know what I'm going to say next, but you're probably not feeling anxious about it, right? The unknown is not the same as anxiety, okay? The unknown is neutral. Something good could be coming, something not so good could be coming. We don't know the future. But what we tend to do with blank spaces is fill them in, right? If I were to say, write on a chalkboard, C blank T, we would fill it in. And most of you would probably fill it in with an A, right? Cat, right? This is probably one of the first words we learned to spell in English. Our brain fills in the blanks. And what we tend to do when we are unsure or when there's uncertainty is fill in the blanks. And what do we fill it with? Some unpleasant things. Sometimes we're quick to imagine negative things when we are unsure, right? And it's a patterned way of thinking. We're going to come back to that idea over and over again today because it's really important. We will not be free to live full and wonderful lives if we are continuously imagining negative things. That's really, really important. So an anxious perspective, a picture of the future that is negative is going to create anxiety for us. And what we want to learn to do is shift that pattern. Instead of thinking negative things, we want to be able to think positive things or different things, right? So we're not aware of what comes our way, and we cannot control what comes our way. That is not ours to do. We cannot control what comes our way. What we do get to do is learn how to respond to it. And our response, our conditioned response, our programmed response to the future that has not happened yet, this is what enables us to break through anxiety and maximize the moment. Okay, I believe life is a gift from God. Okay, and anything that God gives to us is living, it's alive. Okay, now I have this plant here. You guys can see this? Yeah, this is my beautiful little money tree. It wasn't this big when I got it. It was a lot smaller, and it has really grown a lot, but I don't think it's going to grow anymore, right? In this pot, because the size of the pot determines the growth of the plant. Okay. And a lot of the times we aren't aware that we are determining our own growth. We cannot control what comes to us, but we can control how we respond to life. And the way that we respond to life, the way we engage in life is like choosing the pot. It's choosing the size of the pot, okay? I like to deal with spectrums, okay? Ranges of things. So when I think about the quality of life, I put it on a spectrum, okay? We have existing, okay? Then you have coping, you have living, and you have thriving. When things happen to us in life, that's not what dictates where we are on this spectrum. It's not what happens in life. It's how we respond to it. Because that response is going to inform the next response and the next response and the next response. Right? So let's take the pandemic, for example. I didn't know the pandemic was coming. I don't know if you knew the pandemic was coming, but it came. We weren't in control of that. Right? And a lot of people, they just existed, right? It struck them to the core. It shook everything. Well, it shook everything for me, right? But some people, they just existed through it. I mean, when you're existing, you're just barely making it. You're just barely making it. And I would say a majority of people, they coped. So coping is what we do when we are trying to just get through something. Okay. Coping is what we do a lot of the times when we feel uncomfortable emotions like anxiety. We cope. Okay, we distract ourselves. We avoid situations and conversations, right? We don't rise to the occasion. We don't rise to meet the challenge. What we do is we shy away from it. We back away from it. And this is a learned response that we've done over and over. This is a patterned way of existing. So know this, coping, while there's some healthy coping strategies, not all coping is bad. Some people use substances and alcohol and drugs. Some people use sex. Some people spend money. Some people, they work, right? Some people even pray as a form of coping. But remember, coping isn't change. Coping is not change. Change, like this plant, is about growth. If you find yourself in the cycle and you respond to things the same way over and over and over and over, because that's what a lot of people do. Sometimes they are in this relationship and it doesn't work out. Then they go to a next relationship and it doesn't work out. Then they go to the next relationship, it doesn't work out. But what's interesting, if the patterns of the breakdown of the relationship are the same, there's something happening that's being repeated, right? We're probably coping and we haven't really accessed the rest and the best of ourselves so that we actually experience change. Because once you start to experience change, then you start to live. Okay, it's a progression of growth and a quality of life. When you are living, you're not just coping. You're understanding more of yourself. You're able to do things that you weren't able to do before. You're able to think through situations that you weren't able to think through before, right? Your behavior changes. Again, you cannot control what comes to you, but when you increase your ability to respond to things, your quality of life is going to change. Okay. And beyond living, there is thriving. That's when you've got systems in place and you can process things and you can adapt and you can move and you're living a life based on desire. Okay. And I know for a lot of people, desire sounds like a bad thing because we've been conditioned to think that the things that we want are bad. But I want to suggest to you that there's a difference between living based on desperation versus desire. Desperation is what I have to do in order to survive, what I need to do so I can avoid certain outcomes. It's an avoidant lifestyle based on desperation. Even our prayers sometimes, I'm a person of faith and I pray, and sometimes I'm praying from a place of desperation. And and when that's a default, it's a dangerous thing because we're making decisions from that place of fear. We're making that decisions from a place of lack. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen and it might be bad. So let me just play it safe. Let me, I believe in God, but I don't know if he's going to come through for me. So let me just hang back, as opposed to living fully out loud, having a sense that it's going to work out, right? It's a conditioned way of response. And the people who thrive, even in a pandemic, that's their way of thinking. Okay. So we all have the essence of life within us, and we all have equal access to a quality of life. Sometimes we think quality of life is based on money. But when you are thriving, you will find ways to cultivate the gifts that you have so that you engage in the world in a way that you can earn money, in a way that you can access freedom, because it's not really all about money. It's about freedom. It's about choice, right? All these things impact the quality of life. Okay, so I hope I've made my point here, because a lot of the times we hear these words recently in these days about mindset. Okay, mindset is a new buzzword for the same stuff we've heard all of our lives. Essentially, mindset is a patterned way of thinking. And a lot of the times we're not aware, it's beneath the surface. So anxiety is not just a new experience for people that is situational. No, it's not just about this situation or that situation. It's a patterned way of thinking. And a lot of the times our thought patterns and our belief systems are beneath the surface. So we're not really aware of what's happening for us, right? So what we want to be able to do if we're going to change and we're going to break through anxiety and maximize the moment is become aware of our thought patterns. So one of the things that I invite people to do, it's free. If you connect with me, I would love to share an effective journaling resource with you. It helps you to walk through what I call the ATI process, where we increase our awareness, we increase our tolerance of what we become aware of, and then we also increase our intentionality, right? Intentionality, you're doing things with intention. You're saying things with intention. You're actually feeling things with intention because you can change your mind. Change your mind and you'll change your life. When I say change your mind, yes, I'm talking about decisions, but I'm talking about awareness of how you think. So there is this course that I offer on my website to everyone that I work with. And you are in luck. If you're interested, it is the fall sale. Okay, 50% off of this course. It's called Conquering the Big Five. Okay, it's about understanding and changing thought patterns. Okay, again, there in all my work with people, there have been 5 common thought patterns that provoke anxiety. 5. Okay, I've been doing this for 17 years. Wow, in 3 years, it's going to be 2 decades. Right? And for myself personally, I know these thought patterns because I use them, right? I'm so familiar with them, right? And I wasn't aware of them in the past, okay? But now I can be intentional about them and I can navigate my own thoughts a whole lot better, okay? So unintentional anxiety provoking patterns of thought, those patterns fuel our emotions. And those emotions shape and reinforce our beliefs. Okay. We act on how we feel, and then it reinforces what we believe. And most of the time, we're not aware of this. If you're anything like me, there is always a list of things to do. And I never get through my list. Okay. I shouldn't say never, right? Because that's indicative of all or nothing thinking, right? That's one of the ways I can tell how people are thinking and what they're thinking by what they say, right? When you pay attention to what you say and you know what to look for, you'll realize, oh, this is what I'm thinking. So I have my list of things to do and I'm writing my list, and as I'm writing my list and my list is growing, I'm feeling the pressure grow, I'm feeling the weight, I'm feeling the stress, because I know that I'm not going to get through all of this stuff. And even if I prioritize and I say, this is how much time I'm going to put into this is how much time I'm going to put into that, I'm still feeling the pressure. Why? There's this undercurrent of thought that I need to get through it all. Need. You hear that word? Need. It's pressurizing. Okay. It's part of a list of words that I consider negative motivation language, right? I need to get through this. So I'm putting pressure on myself. When the reality is it even possible to do everything that I want to do? No, it's not even possible. But I am conditioned to tell myself, because it's important, there's great value there, but I have this pattern of being unrealistic with myself. I need to get it all done, and I need to get it all done today. But when I stop, because I have some options, right? I feel the anxiety. I feel my shoulders just rising. It's like they want to just ascend and go through the roof, right? When I feel that, I can stop because I know my body's reacting to an emotion that I'm feeling. And I bring calm to my body, takes a few breaths, right? I release the tension in my shoulder, right? Because I'm aware of it. Remember, awareness. And then I'm like, okay, I'm feeling tense. I'm feeling anxious. What's going on? I'm tolerating these feelings. And then I start to think about, what am I thinking? So if I was journaling, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'm telling myself that I need to get all of this done. But is that actually 100% true? No, it's not. I don't need to get it all done. I want to, but I don't need to. And it's that kind of awareness that enables me to shift. Does it come back? Yes, it comes back, especially if I've got timelines and I've got all these things that I want to observe, right? But I don't need to. When I take the pressure off of myself, I can now devote my attention to what I actually want. You know what? I want to finish this thing, right? But more important than finishing it is really enjoying it. I want to give myself to it. When I start to think that way, I start to feel energized. I start to feel life coming out of me that I can give to whatever it is I'm doing. That's relevant for doing a presentation. That's relevant for making a speech. That's relevant for writing a book. We want to be able to give our best to something because that's how we maximize the moment. We don't maximize the moment by fearing, oh, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? Because that's another negative thought pattern. That's an anxiety inducing thought pattern. I call it the negative what ifs, right? I don't even need to ask if anybody can relate to that because we're humans, we do, but some of us do it a lot more than others, right? Some of us do it a lot more than others. And it's really important that we become aware, right? It's really important that we become aware of the thought patterns that we use, whether we use them intentionally or not, okay? Because that's how we break through. So again, if you're interested in taking this course, reach out to me, let me know because it is 50% off right now for fall. And it's interesting. I've talked a little bit about journaling. That's one of the strategies. This course is another strategy that we can use to break through. Um, but it's funny. I was thinking about patterns even on the way to dropping my daughters off to school this morning, and patterns and habits. We can use those words and terms interchangeably. And it's funny, I was trying to teach them this life lesson. And as we were driving, sure enough, we come to a stop and there's traffic and there's this lady walking her dog, a German Shepherd. And she's training this German Shepherd. And in the middle of the walk, she says, sit. The dog sits and she gives it a treat. And my daughters are watching this. I'm like, you see that? She's training the dog. She's training the dog by repetition over and over, and she's rewarding it, right? She's rewarding it. And what's interesting is we're the same way. Remember when I talked about coping not being the same as changing? Well, sometimes when we cope, it gives us an initial reward. We get a sense of relief when we avoid things. And we do it again and again and again. And just like that dog, it's going to become so familiar that it doesn't even need the reward. Following through is going to be the reward in and of itself. Following through with that patterned course of behavior is going to be the reward itself. And that's how we internalize patterns and we deeply entrench certain ways of thinking. So if we cope and we continue to cope and we continue to cope, what does it do? It becomes habitual. Then we avoid and we train ourselves not to maximize the moment. So it's critical that we become aware of our thought patterns so we learn how to do this, okay? When we have these thought patterns that go over and over and over and over in our minds, here's what happens. It becomes a part of our self-concept. And I've been working with people again for so many years. And what's really interesting is we can use the term self-concept interchangeably with esteem. Esteem is your sense of value, what you think about yourself, right? And how you feel about yourself. And those two things are very different. There are two kinds of self-concept. There's the cognitive self-concept, which is just information. I shared with you, my name is Dr. Andrew Blackwood. also known as Coach Drew. So I have roles. I am a mental health professional. I'm a coach. I am a consultant. I'm a father. I'm a believer. I'm a husband. I'm a brother. I have all these roles. That's just information. The experiential self-concept, that's what fills the information. There's what you know about yourself, but then there's what you feel. Okay, that's what you feel. What does it feel like to be you? We don't live from information. Okay, we don't live based on what's on paper. We live based on what we feel, because what we feel, we tend to believe is real and true. I was working with this woman, a wonderful woman. She actually was retired, and she came to me because she was just like, heard some good things about you, and I'm ready to live my life. This woman retired after being a professional. Okay, when I say professional, I mean a top tier professional. She worked in international companies. She led teams, right? She won awards, right? She has patents. A brilliant woman. But she was deathly afraid that someone, anybody, everybody would discover that she wasn't as good as they thought she was. How is that possible? How is it possible? She literally did these things. These accolades, these awards, they were merited, but she didn't feel congruently. It didn't fit with what she was actually capable of doing. What she experienced about herself didn't match up with what she was actually capable of doing. And that's so true for almost everyone. I think 90% of the population functions well below their capacity. We're capable of so much more, but we don't believe that we are. We might know on a conscious level, on a cognitive level, I'm capable of more. But when it comes time to perform and do the more, we struggle. And that's not new. That's not just for you. That's for me. It's for everybody. But it's like this level, the ceiling of growth. And until we break through that level, we'll still be here functioning on this level. We're capable of so much more. And it's understanding who we actually are, right? Because when we feel capable, then we live out the capacity that we have, right? So this is where those questions come into play. Who am I? What am I capable of? The second question, how do I want to be in this moment? How do I want to be in this moment now with this situation? How do I want to be? We know we don't want to feel anxious. We know this. Well, how do you want to feel? I want to feel calm. I want to feel courageous. Right now in this moment, you know how you want to feel. You know how you want to live. And when you start to think about that and you put that on the screen of your mind, you start to feel it. And you do that over and over and over and over. You start to feel it and you start to live from that place. I was going to say, don't worry about the future, but in every sense, that's what I mean. Don't worry about the future. Don't think about the future with those negative images playing on the screen of your mind, because that's what you're going to feel. And here's the beautiful thing. I wasn't going to tell you all this because this is the real good stuff, but I'm going to tell you, okay? This is the real good thing. How you see yourself is relevant to the past as well. It applies to the past. When you think about how you responded to situations in the past, we're quite often aware that we're not happy with that. We're not happy with our performance. We could have done better. We wanted to do, we should have done something different. We should have thought something different. But guess what? You have now. You can actually revisit and revise that and imagine yourself doing something different. Remember, your body can't tell what's the difference between past, present, or future. It can't tell. And you're going to give it those signals that will give you that muscle memory, that experiential muscle memory to say, oh, I did that. I can do that. And you get so familiar with that that you perform. What we rehearse, we perform. We perform what we've rehearsed. So if you rehearse that same horrible decision that you made, you can take responsibility. Yes, you can do that. But part of forgiveness is actually not holding yourself as that version of yourself. Free yourself and see yourself doing something different, something new. You do that now, do that today. Okay, journal about it, write it out, give your brain the cues to feel something different. And that's how you maximize the moment. That's how you break free from anxiety. You become aware of the thought patterns. Okay, that might require some education. Well, guess what? There's a course. Even if you don't want to meet with me directly, you can take the course and move through it at your own pace. But you can connect with me too. I encourage people, do it. I will meet with you for a free 30-minute consultation. We can identify what your thought patterns are, and then you can learn how to move beyond them. It's really important that we choose to do this. Okay. I have my information. You're welcome to connect with me. And I know historically we've talked about connecting with YNOT directly and then them connecting with us. But just YNOT, you're welcome. And if people want to, maintain that confidentiality or whatnot, I can anonymously give you some numbers and let you know who's connecting. But I don't want it to be a barrier, right? If you want to connect directly, please, by all means, email me. I will send you a link. Actually, I'll put it in the chat. I'll try and find it, put it in the chat so you can connect directly with me, because I really want to see, well, everyone in the world, see all or nothing thinking. Sometimes it can be good. I want to see everyone in the world live up and live out their capacity. Okay. So just a review before we jump into the questions. The thought patterns we have, it's important to be aware of them, because whether you're aware or not, you still have them. And if you have anxiety inducing thought patterns, you're going to feel anxious. You picture something negative about the future, you're going to feel it in your body. And the more you feel it, it becomes habitual, but it also seeps into your experiential understanding of yourself, what it feels like to be you. And that's where you live from. It informs what you think about yourself. It informs what you think you are capable, worthy of, and all this other stuff. Now, I typically don't give people money when they ask for it on the streets, because I don't know their life story. I don't know exactly what they're going to do with it. I prefer to invite them to grab something to eat. And I would even love to sit with them if I have the time. And this gentleman asked me the other day, for some money. And I made my offer. I said, yeah, let's go grab something. Let's go grab something to eat. And he said, no, I couldn't ask you to do that. Like, he's like, I can't put you out of your way. I'm like, no, it's not out of my way. This is my way. This is my way. And I want to share this time with you because I believe you are worthy. This is what I'm saying to myself. I know that you're worthy of the time, and the money is not the issue. You're worthy of the time. You're worthy of this moment right now. And because he had conditioned himself to say that he's not worthy, I can't put you out. Right? Whatever it was, he missed out on an opportunity, not just to have a meal, but to share a moment, to maximize a moment. I don't want you to miss out on that. I really don't want you to miss out on that. So my encouragement, reach out. If I can be of help, by all means, I certainly will. So now we're going to transition, and we have a wonderful chunk of time for some questions. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then we'll transition to asking some questions. Can you all still hear me? If you can, yes. Okay, perfect. Excellent. So while you think of questions, you're welcome to throw them in the chat, because I can open up the chat now. And while we're doing that, I'm actually going to grab a link. I'm going to grab a link so that people can actually no, I'll just put my information in the chat. If you guys didn't have a chance to write it down, it's info@coachdrew.ca. I'll do that. My computer's acting funny. So do we have any questions? You're welcome to either raise your hand and then I'll ask you to unmute, or you can throw your questions in the chat. While you are putting your questions in, one of the questions that I get from time to time, I got recently as well, especially as it relates to children. Do children outgrow anxiety? Is this something that we can just grow out of? And my answer is yes and no. Yes, children outgrow certain fears, right? Certain fears. It's developmentally appropriate, right? Not everyone is afraid of, thinking that there is a monster in the closet past a certain age. However, when it comes to thought patterns, that's not something we outgrow. So I know for myself, I grew up a pretty anxious kid, right? I worried all the time. When my mom would leave for work, I worried about her safety. When I would part ways with my younger sister after dropping her off at school, literally my heart would ache with sadness and I would worry that she would, I would worry about her, that whatever would happen and all that stuff. I worried all the time. Then I went to middle school. The context was different. I was worrying about things with my peers, right? I used to run track, okay, and I was pretty good, okay. I got medals at OFSA and all this good stuff, but I was so anxious that I would be sleeping minutes before the race, okay. Anxiety that sometimes rolls over into depression, it can exhaust you. And I was tired. I didn't understand how it worked. I didn't know why I felt the way that I did, but it was part of the way that I thought. And it worked its way into who I was as a person. Okay. So when you identify the thought patterns, then that's when you can actually start to experience long-term change, because these thoughts stay with you. Okay. So we have a question here. All right. You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Is there any activity or something to engage in to help us stop or reduce worrying? Yes, yes, yes. There are several things that we can do. One of the things that I like to do, again, is journaling. Okay. Now, there's all sorts and kinds of journaling that you can do. But in my resource called Effective Journaling, it's a webinar and there are 6 other videos. It's one of the resources that I believe are so important that I share it with people for free. It differentiates itself from other kinds of journaling because it walks you through that ATI process that I talked about. So this is something that you can engage in, where you are actually increasing your awareness of what you're feeling. And part of that is labeling your emotions. So as I process and I journal, which I do morning and I do at nighttime too, because my thoughts are very, very healthy and very, very active. So I label what I'm thinking. Sorry, I label what I'm feeling. And then I look at what thoughts are attached to those emotions. And that's how I increase my awareness. And that's how I increase my tolerance, my ability to deal with emotions. Dealing with emotions is not the same as coping or avoiding them. It's learning to tolerate those emotions. Tolerate those emotions that are initially uncomfortable and unpleasant, because then we get better at tolerating them. But then part of that process is, which another thing that you can do is actually learn how to breathe in a way that brings calm to your body. I've been experiencing so much success with other people, teaching them how to breathe properly. It reconfigures the brain around the issue and around the emotion, because your respiratory system is connected to your digestive system and your nervous system, your circulatory system. It's all connected. So when we worry, parts of our brain are freaking out and they're going into protection and preservation mode. But when we can breathe, we send signals to our body and to our brain that we're not in danger. And then we have access to the other parts of our brain, the reasoning parts. That's why it doesn't make sense to try to reason with children or even adults when they're really worked up. That part of the brain isn't online. It's not available. It's not available in the moment, right? Which is why it's important for us to know how to calm ourselves and reconnect with the way that we want to be, right? It's very possible. So those are some of the things that we can do to help us reduce worrying, to stop it in the moment, but also to reduce it over time. Because now you're going to realize, oh, I have capacity to deal with this. I can deal with this. I have a choice in this matter, right? And that's what's really helpful. So the next question, which is a great question as well. How do you distinguish anxiety from overthinking? So most of the times when people are talking about overthinking, they're not talking about having a deluge of positive thoughts and ideas, right? They're not talking about, let's do this pattern, let's do this. Yes, yes. No, that's not what they're talking about. Overthinking is usually ruminating, where they're stuck on something that is unpleasant, something that's not helping them move forward, right? So a lot of the times, most of the time, it's an anxiety provoking thought pattern. And one of the thoughts that came to me right now, sometimes people can be obsessed and angry, right? And possessive and jealous, right? Believe it or not, even those kinds of thoughts and being stuck in those thoughts, it's coming from a place that is fueled by anxiety and a place of deficit, right? A place of deficit. So I'll finish what I'm saying about this. Actually, you know what? Let me see if I can pull something up here. We have a little bit of time, so I'm actually going to share something with you that I didn't intend to share. Just a moment here. Oh man. Okay, I'm just gonna have to talk us through it. I don't want to plug out my mic and then you not be able to hear me. But I think it might be worth it. Okay. I hope you guys edit this video because bouncing back and forth here. Okay. I'm going to pull up something that's gonna, I believe, help to understand or bring clarity to the experiences that are triggering for us, triggering certain thought patterns. Okay. I just plugged my drive in, so here we go. This is going to be so good. See, I'm anticipating this being very good and being very useful. So appreciate your patience here. Okay, now I'm going to share my screen again. So let me just confirm. Can everyone still hear me? Perfect. Thank you, Kia. Okay, so there are, in my understanding, my current understanding of human nature, there are three core human needs that we have. Okay, three core human needs that we have. A need to feel safe, right? Safe and secure, which causes us to have soundness of mind. Whether that means I know that my physical needs are met, my emotional needs are met, my practical needs are met, right? When we have this sense of safety, then we access calm. Okay. And my computer is opening a whole bunch of things that I didn't want it to open. Oh, it stopped sharing. Okay, let me open this again. There we go. Okay, back online. See, years ago, I would have felt so anxious and would have started to panic, and it's progression, it's growth. So, feeling safe, right? Again, it's wired into our brains and our bodies. When we feel safe, we can actually feel calm. When we feel significant, when we know we're accepted and we know we're loved, that ties into our sense of safety. We know that we are of value and that we matter, that we make a difference. That causes us to feel safe, right? It overlaps. And then there's a sense of strength that I can impact change in my life and the lives of others, right? When we don't feel in control, when we feel anxious because we're imagining our lives going down roads that we do not want to travel down, we feel powerless, okay? So anger is actually a very activating and it's an activating emotion that enables us to access strength, and we try to control and try to hold on to things. But the reason why we do that is because we feel powerless. We feel insignificant, right? Which leaves us feeling vulnerable and unstable, which is very uncomfortable, right? So when we feel these things because we're thinking these things on some level, then we act out of those things without awareness and without intention. That's why most people who hurt other people, they feel guilty, they feel bad. That's not what they wanted to begin with, right? So let's bounce back over to this reality about overthinking. Usually when people are overthinking, it's not because they are happy with their thoughts. They're stuck on something. And it's usually a thought pattern. Well, what if this happens? What if this happens? Well, if this happens, then I got to do this and I got to do it. Or they might be reflecting on something of the past. They're doing it in the present, but it's about the past. Oh man, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, right. What are they going to think of me? Like these thoughts keep going over and over and over and over people's minds. That makes us anxious. And it's a cycle that reinforces itself over and over and over and over again. However, when we can stop, we can be aware, we can breathe and bring calm to our body so that we can actually think, then we can ask ourselves some really important questions. And a lot of those questions are what I call exit strategies. And you learn the exit strategies out of these thought patterns. And you learn not only how to get out of them, but you learn how to change them so that you can change the way that you behave, you change the way that you feel, you change the way that you see yourself, and that's how you experience yourself. So yes, long answer to that really wonderful question. How do you tell the difference between anxiety and overthinking? The two are most often linked together and they're one and the same, right? So I don't typically differentiate them. And what's interesting about these core human needs, from my perspective, yes, they inform how we are best to engage in relationships. Healthy relationships are cultured. They're cultured. There's an environment of safety, significance, and strength in the relationship. But the trick here is your safety, your significance, and your strength is not dependent on the other people in the relationship. That's where a lot of people go wrong. They want other people to fill them up, to give them significance, and to make them safe, and to make them feel strong, and all those things. People are always going to disappoint you because they are not perfect. They're not designed to meet your soul's needs. As much as that might feel good in the short term, it's not good long term. We're spiritual beings. The only person, I believe, that can cause you to feel truly safe and significant and strong in this world is God. This pandemic reinforced my faith in such a way that is just really important, because I didn't know, they have a saying, you never realize what you have until it's gone. Well, I think the same is true about what we rely on. You never realize what you rely on until it's gone, whether it's your job or it's your parent or it's your child. If you rely on these things, these people, for your sense of safety, significance, and strength, when it's gone, we crumble. But even then, it's an opportunity to know, oh my goodness, I survived. I'm still here. What's keeping me going? Right? Now, in that moment, when you've lost seemingly everything, you realize what you actually do have. Right? So a lot of people spend time trying to reclaim and try to get back or get into a new relationship, or, that's not what it is. When we truly realize how wonderful we are, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. When we realize the quality of person we are and what we have to offer the world, you show up in a very different way. You show up with something to give. You show up with something to offer. You are a person of value. You have something incredible to give that no one else in the world has, because there's only one you. And if other people don't see it, it really doesn't matter. Do you see it? That's the question, because that's where you live from. If people don't appreciate you, that's okay. You appreciate you. You move on to another environment where other people are like-minded and they'll appreciate you, or they have different minds and they'll appreciate you anyways. You have something to give. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing because I can't see any questions. All right. Really good question here. In what ways could a spouse help to reduce the anxiety level in his or her partner? Very, very good question. So I think it's, number one, it's always good to start with yourself, to see how you think and how you speak, and to learn the patterns for yourself, because you may unintentionally be communicating with them in a way that intensifies their anxiety, believe it or not. Excuse me. Again, I'll use myself as an example. I am a highly sensitive and attuned person to what I'm feeling and to what I'm thinking, and the language that I use and the language that other people use with me. My wife is not as sensitive when it comes to language. So I talked a little bit earlier about what I call positive versus negative motivation language. Okay. So negative motivation language is really, I have a list of them. If you're interested, hit me up and I will share it with you. But saying that you need to, you should, you have to, right? You can't afford not to. Those are all examples of language that they apply pressure to the other person, using absolute language, like, you always do this, you never do this, how come you can't? Like, doesn't matter what your intention is. If the person is sensitive to this kind of language, what they're hearing, I'm not saying what you're intending, because good intentions don't always equal good outcomes. What they're hearing is character assassination. This is who you are. Why can't you? You're not good enough. You need to. You don't have a choice. You better do this, right? It's not building them up. So if you are not sensitive to that language, or you grew up in that language and you use that language,
It's making their anxiety worse, most likely, right? So learning the language, learning the thought patterns for yourself can actually be a really, really helpful thing to do. The other thing I think that is really important is to, um, well, when you understand the thought patterns, you can actually hear them in the language of the other person. So sometimes their language will trigger us, right? And this is not just true for spouses and partners, but it's also true for children and parents. Because when you hear your child say, "Oh, I can't do this," or "I'm never gonna do this," and they're using that all or nothing language, that defeating, self-defeating language, right? Becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's hard to hear and it's upsetting because we know that they're capable. We know the truth. And we're like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you see the truth? Why can't you see how capable you are? Right? But our frustration isn't what's going to move them to experience change. So sometimes we can help them experience change when we understand the language and we change the language that we're using. Sometimes, if they're open to it, that you can watch the course with them. You can take it with them and just have a dialogue about it, right? It's not accusatory, it's not blaming, it's not demeaning, it's just educational and it changes your family culture, right? You can invite them to talk to somebody about it, somebody who knows what they're talking about. Okay. I'm not just talking about talk to another friend who has no idea. Yes, they can be supported, but they have no idea of the thought patterns. Then it's not going to be a life altering conversation, right? So it's important to be able to connect with somebody who knows how to be of help. So that's another way to help. I mean, we could go on. There are lots of other things that people can do to decrease their anxiety. Sometimes, they're not sleeping well because of the anxiety. So if you invest time in figuring out how to sleep better, eat better, exercise, those kinds of things can also decrease anxiety because anxiety lives in the body as an energy. We didn't talk about that earlier. But when you feel intense emotions, there's an energy that comes with it, and sometimes it gets trapped in the body. You can get worked up with all this tension and be so tight, have knots in your neck, all that kind of stuff, right? When we see how the body is connected with the mind to the soul and all this stuff, there are other ways you can start to decrease the anxiety, help them feel better literally in their body. But then I don't think there's any other way to really impact long-term change without understanding the thought pattern. So we'll eventually come back to that. But thank you. That's a really, really good question. Okay. We still have time for a few more questions. Any other questions? You can ask me questions privately. You can just go to the chat and scroll down, find my name, and click uh, direct direct message, and it will only come to me. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad that question came forward and that it was helpful for someone. All right. So I'm not seeing any more questions. Let's take a few minutes. Talk to me about, give me some feedback. What about the talk stood out to you as important or relevant? Or if anything was unclear that you want me to come back to or add any more clarity to, that would be helpful for me.
So the concept of anxiety over overthinking. So for that, like you're saying that overthinking is something that you have on your mind, like in the moment, and it goes over and over. And anxiety is a continuum, so it continues. And do you get where I'm coming from?
Um, Are you wanting me to provide a little bit of clarity between the differences?
Yes.
Okay. So when I say a continuum, I mean like a range. Okay, there's a range, like a spectrum or a continuum. So you can experience put anything pretty much on a continuum. So anxiety could be, you could be a little bit nervous, or you could be paralyzed and be having panic attacks. So there's a range, right? That's what I mean by continuum. So a lot of the times, because it's natural to feel anxious, but when we move to this range up here where we get stuck and we find ourselves reacting to certain situations in a patterned way, or we get stuck in our thoughts and we're thinking over and over and over and over, that's a different degree of anxiety, which leads to overthinking, right? So when people are overthinking, they're having a really hard time of changing the channel, of moving on after something has happened, or moving on before something has happened, because they're worried that this is going to happen. What if this happens? What if this happens? And you get stuck, right? And you can ruminate and over and over and over. So a lot of times when people talk about overthinking, that's really what's happening. So you want to be able to really, and a simple thing to do is really like write down what it is that you're thinking. Write down, like literally write it down. Because sometimes when we write things down, we can see them literally, but also in contextually, we can see them much more clearly, right? I'll give you an example. Sometimes we ask ourselves questions like, why would you do that? Oh, why would you do that? And if you actually write that question down, then it becomes more obvious that it's actual question, because in our minds, it's taken the form of a question, but it's actually a statement in disguise. We don't really answer the question, right?
Mhm.
Because it's implied that, not why would you do that, but what's wrong with you? What the heck is wrong with you? Right? And we're not aware that that's the thought pattern. That's a thought pattern. Like, you know, I talk to people about healing and healthy communication. We're not aware that that's not healthy communication, because it's indirectly making a statement. It's not a clear question. It's a statement. You shouldn't have done that. You're an idiot, right? But when you write it down, why would you do that? You'd be like, "Oh, I'm not sure why I did that." But then it becomes a legitimate question. And if you really want to move a little bit deeper with that, change the question from why did I do that to any other question. Like, what led me to do that? How was I feeling before I did that? What was going through my mind, right? How many times have I done this before? What factors contribute to me doing that? Now you're opening yourself up to some real quality information in the moment, right? Because you're asking a legitimate question. So when people are overthinking, they're not really thinking about what they're thinking. It's a concept called meta thinking, where you think about what you're thinking. You reflect on the content, you reflect on the pattern or the process, and that's what effective journaling helps you to do. A lot of times people are just rolling around their head hours and hours and hours when they would just journal and write it out, or learn how to do that, right? And then they'd be able to see, oh, I'm asking this question. Okay, well, let me think about it. Because there is an answer. There, I have never been in a situation where there hasn't been an answer for why somebody did something that they did. There's always an answer. I really believe there is always an answer. And sometimes the answer escapes us because we're so anxious and we're so uncomfortable, or we're so fixated that it has to be a particular way, that when we start to open ourselves up to possibilities, what might be some possible reasons why I made this choice again and again and again? Then I don't have to be right. I can think, oh, it might be this, it might be that. And when you start to open yourself up to, then you're like, oh my word, this makes sense. I get it. And that's what I do with people. I know what to listen for. And I teach them how to listen. And then they can hear their own thoughts and it starts to make sense. The road to healing, the road to change is paved with understanding. When you understand yourself, then you can be yourself. When you can understand yourself, then you can be yourself with other people. But if you don't understand you and you don't know you, then how can you be you? It just doesn't work. So that's what I think and believe about overthinking. Right?
Yeah.
Does that add clarity for it?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're so welcome. Really good question. Thank you for having the courage to come back to it. So another question, does anxiety ever serve a positive purpose? Like maybe let you know that you need to change something? I would definitely say yes, but there is just because we feel something that's unpleasant or uncomfortable doesn't mean it's anxiety, right? We might feel a little hesitant. We might feel unsure. We might feel, you might have a sense about something. A lot of the times, part of what the education is, and the education that shifts culture, is expanding and broadening our emotional repertoire, our emotional vocabulary, right? I know we talk a lot about anxiety because it is a big thing, but just because you feel uncomfortable, unsure, uneasy, maybe even apprehensive, doesn't mean you're actually feeling anxious or nervous or scared, right? There's a whole range of anxiety related emotions, right? So sometimes we can have like a check in our spirit or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, something's up, right? And that could be enough, right? But yes, anxiety also can be an invitation to change something, like the way that you think. Or if you're in an unhealthy relationship where people are controlling, that can induce anxiety because, like I said before with that diagram, we're designed to function well in atmospheres where we have choice, because that gives us a sense of empowerment. We were designed to choose. And in situations where people limit your choice, you're going to feel powerless. And that can trigger feeling anxious, right? You know you're going to engage in a particular dynamic because this is how this person has been for a period of time. That's their MO and they have no desire to change. So then you anticipate this, and that can be a kind of anxiety. Again, you're thinking about the future and it's negative. So yeah, it can invite you to be like, okay, well, I don't want to be a part of this. And if you find yourself stuck there, you probably have some all or nothing thinking going on. But I don't have a choice. I can't leave this and like that, right? And it might not sound like anxiety provoking thoughts, but if you feel trapped and you believe that you're trapped, you're gonna feel anxious. That's my perspective. So yes, anxiety can serve a positive purpose if you become aware of it and if you learn how to use it and navigate it and learn about what's happening in your mind, in your heart, in real time, and not just continue to go in the same cycle and experience the same stuff. Very good question. Very, very good question. Now we have about 7 more minutes to go. So my question still stands. Are there either any more questions about something that I can add more clarity to, or is there something that you're taking away that was relevant or that resonated with you, that was important for you? Okay, so I'm going to assume that there aren't any more questions at the moment, or that people would prefer to connect, send their questions directly. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. So I just put my my email in the chat there. And again, by all means, if you're interested in a free 30-minute consultation to talk about thought patterns, or if you want to know how to access the content, the fall sale pricing, by all means, let me know. Let me know. I'll be glad to help. Okay. So, moderator, I am going to turn it back over to you.
Hello again. Thank you so much for being here today. For me personally, I will say that I got a lot from this presentation. It was wonderful. Like, I'm taking away how I could deal with anxiety when it arrives. So that's wonderful. And I want to say thank you from all YNOT staff on giving us some insight. And I want to say thank you for everyone that joined. And if you have any question, you could always reach out. Don't forget to leave your email in the chat, and also, and you could use an emoji, or you can also use open your mic to let Dr. Blackwood know how you felt today. And it could also show him like where you're going with this information. Again, thank you, Dr. Blackwood, for coming today to speak to us, and your presentation was phenomenal. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. You guys could go ahead and leave the emoji in the chat. It's just underneath the bottom where it says reaction. You could leave it there, or you could type it in the chat.
You're so welcome, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you. Okay, bye now.
Bye.